Hi. So I had a long conversation this week about attention deficit hyperactivity disorder with a young couple I know quite well. They're great parents, and they had grown increasingly convinced that one of their children was indeed on the ADHD spectrum. Now, they've done a lot of reading about the disorder, and they looked at the 18 core symptoms that are in the DSM-5, which is the standard reference book that doctors use. And to be considered having ADHD, you have to have at least 6 out of the 9 symptoms causing problems, 6 out of 9 in inattention, and 6 out of 9 for the hyperactivity and impulsivity. And their child displayed, out of 18, 17 of the symptoms. Now, luckily, they were well informed, they were calm, they thanked me for all the work that we had done to destigmatize and educate around this disorder because they'd watched a lot of videos and it had put their mind at ease. And now they wanted to see a doctor to have it confirmed and find out what they could do for their little one. But everywhere they looked, they encountered waiting lists, 6 months or longer to get an assessment done. They were frustrated, asking, is a diagnosis really necessary, since they were pretty sure, as anyone could be, that this was ADHD. And for now, medication wasn't on the table. I get that. Medication's the last thing any parent wants to give their child. So they didn't think, well, maybe we don't need to see a doctor. Although, to their credit, they had done enough reading to know that medications wouldn't damage their child or turn them into a zombie, and so on. They wanted to get a proper diagnosis, but the waiting lines are immense, and they wondered if a doctor would actually give them any special advice or recommendations that they couldn't find elsewhere. Is it worth it? My answer was, a proper diagnosis is always a good idea. The doctor indeed may have specific advice for your child's situation, their strengths or weaknesses. So I told them, get on a waiting list right away. Even though folks with ADHD are not big on waiting, get on a waiting list. Then, assume it is ADHD and act accordingly. You ask, well, if we knew for sure that it was ADHD, what would we be doing? Well, reading and learning about it, which they've been doing. Getting the child involved in sports, great. Identifying their interests, great. And start doing mindful meditation together with the child, and so on. In fact, a lot of what I suggested this couple already knew and were already doing, which was wonderful. They're both whip smart, well-educated, vast range of knowledge, so they had done a good job of separating the reliable sources of information from the ones that were either wrong, half wrong, pushing this airy-fairy, isn't it wonderful narrative, or trying to sell them on some products, supplements, or whatever. So they knew a lot, but obviously whatever I said must have been helpful and new, because they took 2.5 pages of notes about things they didn't know or wanted to look into. For example, they were surprised at the costs of not doing anything. Not a lot of talk about that. Online, there's a lot of stuff about feelings and honoring your feelings and how it's a superpower and go for you and go, go, go. But unless the ADHD is dealt with, a child with ADHD is more likely to be expelled from school. They're at higher risk of dropping out and of having fewer friends. On average, kids with ADHD have more accidents, more ER visits, and more fights with their siblings. They struggle more with emotional and social problems. Tell me about it. In their teens, they have 2 to 4 times the rate of car crashes than their non-ADHD peers, and they are far more likely to be at fault. Studies show they have more sexual partners, which leads to much higher rates of STDs and unplanned pregnancies. Oops. Impulsivity. As adults, they're way more at risk for depression, anxiety, and substance abuse because they're self-medicating. It goes on. 2 to 3 times the rate of divorce, of unemployment, of facing underemployment, meaning they settle for a job that's beneath their potential. And then I suggested the husband, who was quite successful but knew there was ADHD in his family tree, that he look into the possibility that he has it. He was coping fairly well, I think, but what if it was just much easier to get through life if he knew what was going on? But I have to say, I loved the fact that we made such a difference for them in calming things down and getting them optimistic through ADD and loving it and everything that we've done since then. I know my wife and I originally set out to transform the conversation around ADHD so that people would be informed, grounded, optimistic but realistic, aware of the myths and able to bust them, and ready to take their first steps towards getting it handled. Because eventually, once you start to get it handled, certain aspects, certain traits of your ADHD can indeed become a kind of superpower, where you shoot webs out. No, you know what I mean. Thanks for watching. If this was helpful for you, do like and share and even follow.